Welcome back, guys. Before I read another chapter of The Wild Robot Escapes, I wanted to show you something cool that came in today. Da, da, da. It is the third installment of this series called The Wild Robot Protects. So, potentially a third read aloud series that we can do in the future. Just saying. Oh, here comes Stella. I hear her grunting in. She can't believe that I'm talking to you guys and not paying full attention to her. All right, I'm gonna get her under my desk just a second. All right, sorry about that. She is all settled now in her nest. Okay, we are going to continue. The wild robot escapes. Let me just check that my mic's working. Excellent. Okay. We are on chapter 14. The sad truth. Sorry, my mic is all everything's going wrong right now. Sorry about that. Chapter 14, The Sad Truth. That night, while everyone else was sleeping, Roz stayed up with her computer and researched sneaky subjects. She looked for diagrams of her own body and for maps of the area, and for any news that might help her escape. But the robot found nothing. The computer only left her access information about farming. She was cut off from the outside world. It was clear that if Roz wanted to escape from her new life, she would need help. But the cows didn't know how to escape, and Mr. Sharif would never let his robot leave. Who would possibly help Roz run away from the farm? Chapter 15, The Children. As time rolled by, Roz saw less and less of Mr. Sharif, but saw more and more of the children. They were shy at first. The robot might look up from the pasture and see Jad peeking around the corner of the barn, or see Jaya spying from the branches of the tree. But the children were growing bolder. And then one day, Roz marched into the workshop and heard giggling. She walked into the closet in back, opened the door, and there was Jaya smiling and trying not to laugh. "I'm hiding from my brother," she whispered. "Close the door." The robot closed the door. A minute later, Jad ran in, flushed and out of breath. "Hey, Roz, have you seen Jaya?" The robot just stared. "I know she's in here," said Jad, and he began prowling around the room. He searched under the work table and behind the tool chest and between all the bulky workshop machines. Finally, he marched up to Roz and said, "I order you to show me where my sister is hiding." The robot pointed to the closet. Jad smiled mischievously and tiptoed over. Then he flung the door open and screamed, "Found you!" "No fair," Jaya whined. "Roz showed you where I was hiding." The girl scowled at the robot. "That wasn't very nice, Roz. But you can make it up to me by playing hide and seek. Count to 100 and try to find my brother and me, okay?" There was a brief pause. Then the robot said, "Okay." Jaya and Jad squealed with delight and scampered out the door as Roz started counting. The robot's sensitive ears listened carefully to the children outside. She heard quick footsteps crunching across the driveway. She heard a giggle and sounds of tree branches shaking. She heard a grunt and sounds of hay bales being shoved aside. When the robot finished counting, it took her exactly 5 seconds to find Jaya up in a tree. It took her another 8 seconds to find Jad in the hayloft. "Wow, Roz is really good at seeking," said Jad as he picked hay from his hair. Jaya snorted. "Yeah, well, let's just see how good she is at hiding." Roz was even better at hiding. While the children counted, the robot silently slipped away. And an hour later, they still hadn't found her. The siblings stood in the driveway defeated. "We give up, Roz," shouted Jad. "You win," shouted Jaya. The junk pile beside the barn started moving, and Roz appeared. The robot had been sitting there all along, perfectly camouflaged among the scrap metal and old farm machines. The next time we play, you have to let up one of us win, said Jad to Roz. And the next time they played, Roz did. The robot enjoyed having the children around. They brought a little lightness into her world, and she hoped to bring a little lightness to theirs. Life must have been dark since their mother passed away. However, Roz had another reason for wanting the children around. She needed them. Her only chance of ever returning home was if Jaya and Jad could find it in their hearts to help her escape. But this was a delicate situation. If Roz tried too hard, the children might say something to their father. If she didn't try hard enough, she might be stuck on that farm forever. Chapter 16, The Robot's Dream. Cows grazed in the pasture. Wind rustled through the tall grass. Clouds drifted over the fields. Farm machines rumbled and buzzed. Milk flowed into bottles. Bottles were packed into boxes. Boxes were loaded onto the milk truck. The truck drove away full and returned empty. Children romped around with their dog. A man sat at his desk. A robot dreamed of escape. Chapter 17, The Birds. Hilltop Farm was home to many birds. Swallows were always swooping low over the grass and picking off insects. Crows cawed from the fields like a gang of hecklers. At night, owls glided above the countryside, silently searching for furry little meals. The robot was stuck on that farm, but the birds were free to go wherever they pleased. Lucky birds. One day, Roz was standing in the pasture admiring a hawk as he soared through the sky. When the cows began grazing around her, their slow footsteps crunched in the grass. Their teeth chewed and chewed. Their tails flicked at flies. All the while, Roz stood there, staring up at the hawk. And then came Lily's soft voice. What are you thinking about, Roz? The robot turned to the calf. I am thinking about Bright Bill, she said. It was not long ago that I was watching my son soar through the sky. That seems like another lifetime. You must hate your new life, said Annabelle. I can't say that I blame you. Farming looks like such grueling work. Actually, I like farming, said Roz. Somehow it feels right to spend long hours working with machines and tools and crops and animals. But I miss my old life on the island. Tess had a mouthful of dandelions, but that didn't stop her from speaking. Maybe you should start thinking of this farm as your home. That island is awfully far away. There's a good chance you'll never make it back there. Don't say that, cried Lily. Roz just has to make it home. She needs to be with Bright Bill and her friends. Tess is right, said Roz. I may not ever make it home. If I were a bird like my son, I could fly home all on my own, any time I wanted. But I am only a robot. Nobody spoke after that. The cows went back to grazing, and Roz went back to admiring the hawk. Her eyes followed the bird as he soared through the sky, free to go wherever he pleased. We're going to end with chapter 18 today, The Entertaining Robot. The children wandered out behind the farm buildings, through a clearing and over to an old oak tree. It was the same tree their father had climbed when he was a boy. Mr. Sharif's initials were carved into the bark at the bottom of a long list of initials. For generations, all the Sharifs had carved their initials into the tree, going back to the ancestors who first built the farm. Someday the children would add their own initials to the list. Beneath the leafy branches was a scattering of acorns. Chad cleared a spot for himself, sat down, and pulled a small computer from his pocket, while Jaya climbed above. The siblings spent the afternoon there, lazing around the tree, until the robot marched past, carrying the big, heavy toolbox. "What you doing, Roz?" The robot stopped. "The drone has crash landed again," she said. "I am going to fix it again." "Do you need any help?" "I do not need any help." "I'm bored," said Jaya, her legs dangling from above her brother's head. "Can you do something fun, Roz?" The robot put down her toolbox and said, "What would you like me to do?" "I don't know," said Jaya, thinking hard. "Can you do a backflip?" "Yes, I can do a backflip." A grin spread across the girl's face. "Roz, I order you to do a backflip." At that, Roz crouched and then she leapt into the air, flipped backward, and gently landed on her feet. A perfect backflip. Jad put his computer away. Jaya jumped down from her branch. The children were impressed. "What else can you do?" said Jad. "Can you juggle?" "Yes, I can juggle." "I order you to juggle some, of these acorns." Roz walked up to the tree, picked 3 large acorns from the ground, and began juggling them in perfect rhythm. Jaya studied the robot's movements and then began tossing acorns into the air as well. The first one went a little too high, the next one went a little too far, and soon they all went tumbling back into the grass. "Do you know any jokes?" said Jad. "Why did the chicken cross the road?" "Never mind." Jad scratched his head. "Can you tell us a story?" "What kind of story would you like to hear?" "A robot story," said Jad. "An animal story," said Jaya. "How about a robot and animal story?" said Roz. The children smiled at each other. Then they sat against the tree and looked up at the robotic storyteller. "Once upon a time, there was a robot who lived alone on an island," Roz began. "She spent her time wandering across mountains and forests and meadows, and then something terrible happened. Rocks fell and the robot tumbled off a cliff. She survived the fall, but sadly the rocks killed 2 geese and smashed 4 of their eggs." The robot stood there, staring at the poor goose family, until she heard a tiny voice peeping from somewhere nearby. She followed the peeping voice and discovered a perfect goose egg, sunk in the dirt. The robot carefully picked up the egg and carried it away. And when the gosling hatched from his shell, the first thing he saw was the robot looking back. "Mama, Mama," he peeped. The gosling thought the robot was his mother, and from that day on, she was. The robot adopted the gosling as her son, and together they made a funny little happy family. The end. The children sat there and thought about Roz's strange story. And then they looked up at her and said, "What happened next?" And that's where we're going to stop for today. I hope you enjoyed today's chapters of the Wild Robot Escapes. And I look forward to in the future reading the 3rd book. If you are interested, please drop a like on this video. And if you're excited for the movie that is coming out of the 1st book, then give me a comment and let me know if you plan on going to see it. Have a great day. I hope you're safe. I hope you have fun, and I'll see you next time.